the riot. There had been speeches on Freedom Plaza, and Roger Stone had told a lot of the Trump supporters who had come to DC and who would the next day storm the Capitol that this was nothing less than a battle between light and dark, the godly and the godless. And I do believe that that's how many of the participants in the insurrection viewed their actions, not as a political act, but as something taking place in a more timeless kind of cosmic, spiritual framework.
Well, Luke, we only have about a minute or so left, but I wanted to, if you could go back before January 6th. In your book, you talk about the protest, the November 7th protest at the Pennsylvania State Capitol in Harrisburg, where you began to first realize that there could be violence. This was a Stop the Steal rally that occurred there. I'm wondering if you could talk about that and the fervor that drove some of these folks around the issue, the bogus issue that the election was stolen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was the day that all of the national news networks called the election for Biden, and you had a large gathering of Trump supporters, many of them belonging to the Pennsylvania 3%er militia, heavily armed, at the state capitol in Harrisburg. And the moment the election was called, they were already calling for violence, and not just them, by the way, but elected officials as well. Congressman Dan Mauser was there, Doug Mastriano was there, other Trump campaign surrogates were there, and there was just no question that they were going to accept the results of the election. But it wasn't just November 7th. It went back to previous rallies, even before all of the results had come in various swing states, which I witnessed, for example, in Detroit. Day there was a mob at the TCF Convention Center.
We have 10 seconds, Luke.
Yeah, so January 6th was not a surprise. It was foretold.
And of course, Mastriano is running for governor of Pennsylvania right now, the Republican candidate. Luke Mogelson, the New Yorker's award-winning war correspondent. His new book out this week is titled "The Storm is Here: An American Crucible." And that does it for our show. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Stay safe.
WBNY Buffalo.
The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of 91.3 FM WBNY, the United Students Government at Buffalo State, or Buffalo State itself. Due to the opinionated nature of these programs, listener discretion is highly advised. If you have any questions or comments about today's program, you can give us a call at 716-878-5104.
To join Mr. Hare on today's Living for the People, dial 878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. Or go to facebook.com/91.3 WBNY and comment there. That's facebook.com/91.3 WBNY, courtesy MSNBC.
I think it is very dangerous, and I think it is very harmful, and it makes us weaker. I have met with, and I've had conversations with over 100 foreign heads of state, presidents, prime ministers, chancellors, kings. When we as the United States walk into those rooms around the world, we have had the honor and privilege historically of holding our head up as a defender and an example of a great democracy.
Now, it's real interesting that interview came up around Chuck Todd asking the question, I buy we're supposed to defend ourselves from enemies, both foreign and domestic. Todd asked, is our threat from domestic enemies equal to or greater than the threat that we are facing from foreign enemies. And Kamala, and I mean, I'm trying to be in love with Kamala. You know, I'm trying to, let's all be on the same team. But you know, if we're all on the same team, when my oar goes in the water, I expect your oar to be in the water with mine. I don't expect your oar to be sitting on your lap, and I'm the only one, you know, rowing the boat. And I think that's what's going on here, you know, with Kamala. She gives this waffly marshmallow, you know, petticoat commercial that says virtually nothing. And I think that's why Democrats are having what they keep calling the message problem. You're having a message problem because you don't really have the gahunas to actually say what your message is. If your message is that however you feel about abortion, you have to feel something supremely above that about the American democracy. Your opinion about abortion should not condition whether or not you believe in the American democracy. If you believe that abortion should be legal, then you should campaign for abortion being legal. If you win, you win. If you believe abortion should not be legal, you should campaign for it to not be legal. And if you win by getting a majority of the people in your district to vote. That's the American democracy. If your position is that I like option A, and if I don't get it, I'm going to shoot you in the nose, that's not the American democracy. You have to stand against people who would use their guns and mob violence and so on to get their way, rather than use the systems and protocols of the American democracy to try to get as much of what they want as policy effected in the United States. So we have our cousin, Vice President Kamala Harris, in town. So that was part of what James wanted us to. She's in Buffalo right now.
Today?
In fact, I believe she's here as we're speaking right now.
Awesome.
Yep.
And she's over at the UB Grow Energy Center. As you know, our president has passionately committed the country to literally turn the boat away from the fossil fuel, you know, path that it's been on, and send the boat down the path of green energy, renewable energy. And he's put he's put hundreds of billions of dollars on the table over the course of the next 10 years to steer the boat in that new direction. And so she's here to help bring that message home. Hopefully it'll be much more concrete than the little waffly message that she gave about, you know, foreign and domestic terrorism. Now, I'm sorry. Now
No.
you know, I'm, you know, you all know, you've known me for a long time. I try to tell you what's actually true. If I don't know if something's true or false, I tell you I don't know whether it's true or false, and I'm just giving you my opinion. This is not my opinion, okay? This is the facts. Now, she's also going to be talking to people about the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, of course, the Republicans do what they always do. They find something that they can spin out of what you say or you're doing that they can make sound insidious, and then they make that the story rather than what the fundamental story is. Fundamentally, the United States is on a path where it's going to be difficult for you to rein in inflation over the course of time. Why? Despite all of the things they're saying to you in the press, the reality is when you went from 16 or 17% unemployment to 3.5% unemployment, you brought 13% of the population that was unemployed into the population of people that were employed. Guess what those people who were employed had that the people who were unemployed didn't have? You're right. They had salaries. They had money coming into their pocket every week. 13 million people now have $50,000 on average coming into their pockets every week. As a consequence, you have a lot more money in people's hands, and money computes to demand. If you have a lot of money, there's people out there who are demanding goods and services. If I have the money to pay for it, I'm making demands for those goods and services. The people that produce those goods and services may not be able to produce enough supply of the things that you need or that you want to be able to meet the needs of the people making the demand for those goods and services. That's what causes the price for things to rise. Because in the American system, you control how many people are asking for stuff by the price. If you raise the price high enough, people will stop asking for it. They'll find something else to do, and you can align your supply, with demand. Now that goes up and down. Supply goes up and demand in ratio goes down. Demand goes up and supply in ratio to demand goes down. Those things affect the basic physics of our economy in the United States. But listen, let me tell you a little bit about whose program you're on. This is L. Nathan Hare, welcoming you to our broadcast, focused on providing you insight into events shaping our national and regional world and the facts behind those events and policies that are shaping our world for today and for tomorrow. Join us weekly on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. following Me Goodman's Democracy Now! Program. And of course, our program is live, so you can call in, you can join our discussion. We really hope that you will. Our number here again is 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. We have membership now in the 21st century, and we have the ability now to live stream the program. But of course, I don't have the ability to do that. We have our producer of the live streaming of our program, Willie H. Welcome, Willie.
Welcome everybody to Living for the People. I'm happy to announce that today we are going live to Twitter, to LinkedIn, and to YouTube, as well as my Facebook family and my TikTok family. You guys got to call in 716-878-5104.
We love it. And we're also here with our producer, James Brown. Welcome, James.
Good morning, Mr. Hare.
And so together, what we try to do is look at emerging facts and then try to understand what causes that particular set of facts to come to the fore at this point in time. And then how do we feel about it? What does it mean to us? And we try to share that with you. We look for you to share that with us. And the collection of all of us talking about these facts from our different points of view helps us elucidate for our audience, the possible ways they can look at what's going on and maybe help people to make firm decisions about how they think about those things. So today, Kamala Harris is talking about the Inflation Reduction Act. And as I was alluding to a moment ago, the Inflation Reduction Act is not going to reduce prices on Thursday. It's reducing the pressure on prices, talking about 2, 3, 4 years down the road. Why? What puts pressure right now, in addition to the demand that's being made by all of these people that are employed today that weren't employed, a year and a half, 2 years ago? In addition to that, you've also got the demand for fuel, because we're a gasoline-driven economy, right? A society. And so in order to reduce the pressure on prices when gasoline gets disrupted, as I think all of you are aware, that we've had significant disruptions in gasoline availability because we've had significant disruptions in oil availability, and 60% of the price of gasoline is the price of oil. So if oil prices go up, gasoline prices go up. And of course, the people that own the refineries, they see an opportunity to cheat you, so they immediately start cheating you as soon as they see an opportunity to get you to go for it, and they do. The point is that if we begin to move ourselves away from gasoline, fossil fuels, we not only take the pressure off of ourselves in terms of the price push on gasoline, we also take the pressure off of the planet, because instead of burning stuff that produces more carbon dioxide and methane in the environment, now we're producing stuff that doesn't put any of that stuff in the environment. It's actually clean fuel. And so hydrogen, is also another clean fuel. You burn hydrogen, it doesn't create any bad products, in the atmosphere. So that's one way to reduce cost. Other ways to reduce costs, have to do with the subsidy of prescription drugs. That if we know that 60% of Americans, or 40%, I forget the exact figure, are insulin dependent or have somebody who's insulin dependent in their household, then there's a tremendous amount of demand for insulin. We somehow allowed ourselves to get sucked into, the Ronald Reagan, ship it overseas, to the low wage countries, because that'll save us money, which it never did, but they said it was going to do that. And the consequence is 80% of the insulin that the country needs is actually produced overseas. So if the overseas people decide they don't like you, they can just hold your insulin, right, and put you in a bind. I mean, that's what they did with the gasoline. You know, they hold the oil, right, and put you in a bind. So Europe is in a bind right now because they are addicted to Russian oil, and the Russians will say, well, if you don't like us invading, you know, Ukraine and stealing Crimea, well, we don't like giving you gasoline. And then the Europeans say, well, you know, we don't like that you took Crimea, but we're okay that you did it. Send more gas, you know, or send more oil, you know, and so on. It's that situation that the Inflation Reduction Act is really working on those issues, how to reduce the pressure on us price wise in the future by creating alternative supplies that are going to be permanent. Renewable supplies like wind, the wind comes all the time. You can use up all of the windmill wind you want. It's not going to change the amount of wind that's going to be there tomorrow or a week from now or 75 years from now or 7,000 years from now. That same wind is still going to be there. So if you can make your country's energy be driven off of wind, you never have to hunt for energy anymore. All you got to do is keep the windmills oiled and you're good to go, right? So that's what the Inflation Reduction Act is really focused on. I'm saying it in simplistic terms because we can't talk about all of this stuff, you know, at one time. But that's what Biden put together. That's what Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, is talking to the public about right now. But I want to get to the initial thrust of the soundbite that you provided. When we were talking about this before, I wanted to make sure that we remember something. And it troubles me that we have not acted like we remember it. This is the week of September 11th. How many of you are present in your mind right now, have it in the top forefront of your brain right now, that this is the week of September 11th and what happened on September 11th of 2001? Have you heard a word about that, you know, today? Have you heard much about it yesterday? Did you hear much about it, you know, on Monday?
I did see that C-SPAN was covering.
Yeah, they have a really big audience, you know, on C-SPAN.
Well,
no, you're right. You're right. C-SPAN had something to say, and good, but
they tend to carry these ceremonies in a nonpartisan way.
I understand that the prince, the Queen of England, Elizabeth, passed away, you know, and
Yeah.
we're in that grieving, you know, thing.
Well,
but that should not have knocked 9/11 off of the news. That should not have knocked our.
They were reading names of people who perished on 9/11, some of the firefighters. So when they had these ceremonies in the southern part of the state, C-SPAN kind of
right there, but
I mean,
just
MSNBC,
saying,
C-SPAN, CNN, they didn't go nuts.
I guess I'm saying, you know, D-Day, you know, we stopped the planet, you know, for D-Day. You know, we have for things that we commemorate, you know, we make it like a national holiday or something. You know, it's something that we stop the world and we commemorate this thing. They attacked the United States. They blew up the World Trade Center. They tried to blow up the Pentagon. They tried to blow up the White House. We fought these people. We knocked these people down. I mean, James, you and I have talked about this for years.
Right.
Look how much money and how much life and how much property, how much redirection of what we are as a country was done in order for us to get the people who were located in Afghanistan, even though it was not the Afghan government that was involved in this. In fact, I'm not sure more than 6 people in the Afghan government even know where the United States is. But the people who did know where the United States was, those Saudi Arabians who were, you know, leasing land from some Taliban warlords, they knew where America was, and they're the ones who planned that attack. It turned into several tens of billions of dollars of expenditure, 60, 70, 80,000 people dead, you know, blowing up the Tora Bora Mountains and whoever it was that we didn't think, or we thought was somehow a part of the conspiracy to attack the United States. I mean, this was a momentous thing, right? And so you would expect that there'd be a postmark in everybody's consciousness every time September 11th comes up, that all of us remember September 11th. And so I'm just saying to you that bothers me. So I'm not saying that you all have to feel that way. I'm just saying that this is L. Nathan Hare.
Right.
It bothers me that we don't have that as a postmark in our mind. But I went to an article written by Kelly McClure. I know we got just so much time. In her article, she talks about Vice President Harris, that Harris wishes attacks from within were handled as Americans and not through partisan lens. And what she's talking about, this is in the Salon magazine, and what she's talking about is that it used to be that if something was happening that appeared to be a threat to the United States, you could bring in the Lindsey Grahams, you could bring in the Bernie Sanders, you can bring in the Ocasio-Cortez, you could bring in the Ted Cruzes and sit down in a room, and now you take off all of the partisan clothes. I'm not Republican, I'm not Democrat, I'm just an official of the United States, and we've got something in front of us that we've got to deal with. And then you sit down and you focus on where the threat is, you put together what the resource availability is to address that threat. You put a timeline and a plan together, and then you go and execute what you got to do to deal with that threat. And you do that without ratting people out, saying this person cried, this person talked too loud, this person can't write. You don't do that. You all focus on what you need to accomplish in that meeting. That's the way it used to be. Well, Kamala Harris is saying that that's the way she thought things would be, but that doesn't appear to be the way things are right now. That even in the most serious crises that we're facing as a country, you can expect the Lindsey Grahams, the Donald Trumps, the Ted Cruzes, the Lauren Bobberts, and so on, to manipulate that thing to try to pitch their own agenda rather than do what's in the best interest of the United States as a whole. So she talks about this 21st marking of the 9/11 attack on the United States. And she says, we're now as a nation battling a threat from within. Chuck Todd asked her, is that threat greater than the one that we faced after 9/11? She responded that that was an interesting question. I got to tell you now, my brain just roils when you say something. What do you mean, is that an interesting question? What's the question at all? Americans attacked Americans, period. You can't get it more serious than that. What do you mean is that's an interesting question? But I'm sorry, we're going to be running for president. That's what she wants to run on. She needs to hand that mantle over to somebody else. You need to be much more concrete to get the support of L. Nathan Hare. I need people that are going to go get the goal, not just going to waffle their way, about it.
It seems, Mr. Hare, that Americans just have a short history when it comes to some of these disasters to our country. Like, how many people know what December 7th is? Now, I know I'm going way back, but it's not that far. I mean, it's not like I'm not going back like 1,000 years or something. It's, what's this, like 60 years ago or whatever?
But it was D-Day. If it was F-Day, maybe it would be different.
Well, I'm just saying that we were attacked.
And I'll bet you that a lot of the people that are in our audience right now don't know what you're talking about when you say December 7th.
That's what I mean.
They don't. What does that mean? D-Day. What does D-Day mean? I mean, we lost so many hundreds of thousands of Americans fighting in a war that wasn't even our war. Right? I mean, until Pearl Harbor was attacked, there was no threat being made against the United States, during that.
From the Pacific.
From the Pacific side, right? But even on the European side, there was a threat in Europe that we may have felt was a threat to the United States, but nobody had attacked the United States, from Europe on the east side of the American nation.
Mr. Hare, there's an anecdote that when Pearl Harbor was bombed, Sir Winston Churchill did a jig around the chair, knowing that the U.S. would be drawn into the war.
In fact, there's some people who think that maybe he paid somebody, that's another story, right? But going on to compare her experiences with the different dangers found in the two threats, meaning both domestic and foreign, Harris recalls times when Republicans and Democrats would enter a secure facility called a secure confidential information facility. They'd roll up their sleeves and address the matters at hand, not through a partisan lens, but as Americans fighting for a unified good on common ground with a common purpose, which is to defend our nation from attacks. Peter Stone writes in an article in the Guardian magazine entitled Trump's increasing tirade against FBI and the Department of Justice is endangering the lives of officials. And let me hit this point, then I'm gonna grab this call. Peter Stone cites in his article, he says, Donald Trump's nonstop drive to paint the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago to recover classified documents as a political witch hunt is drawing rebukes from ex-Justice Department officials and FBI officials who warn such attacks can spur violence and pose a threat to the physical safety of law enforcement. I stuck in this note, James, which I think is important, that if that statement that Peter Stone has wrote that I just read, if that statement is true, it expresses something more about a segment of the American population than simply political rivalry. There appears to be a significant element of the American population who are inclined to turn to lawlessness in order to get their way. That's the threat that we are facing inside the country. We have a caller hanging on. Let me get that call real quick. Hi, caller, are you there?
Hi, Mr. Hare. How you doing?
Hey, James, how you doing?
Pretty good. You know, Kamala Harris needs to state in no uncertain terms that the Republican Party is a domestic and international terror organization.
I wouldn't go quite that far.
There are no two ways about it.
Be careful, we might get kicked off the radio. Be careful, guys.
No, go ahead, James.
Well, look, the real 9/11 happened in 1973, 49 years ago, when
Timothy McVeigh.
Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger enlisted the help of the CIA to bump off Salvador Allende, the democratically elected president of Chile, and put in his place a U.S. corporate-friendly general by the name of Augusto Pinochet. And after that, he started disappearing people and torturing people. Thousands of people died. That's how the U.S. rolls. And, you know, as long as we're corporate-owned and the Republican Party's corporate-owned, we are a terror exporter. So I would say in no uncertain terms that the Republican Party is 100% a terrorist organization.
So we're going to let other people in our audience give their thought about that. I personally would not go that far. I will say this. I will say this. Not that they're a terrorist organization, but the Republicans seem to tolerate people who align with the Republicans. They may not even be Republicans, but they align with Republicans. For example, at these Republican, rallies that Donald Trump would have, you'd see people with horns on their heads, with Confederate flags, tattoos all over their faces and whatnot, hollering about, America for us. And who's the us that America's supposed to be for, right? You would see that. Now, they would not necessarily be card-carrying members of the Republican Party, but they don't go to Democratic rallies. They go to Republican rallies. Why? Because at the Republican rallies, there are people who clap with them when they say these horrid things that James is talking about. They applaud. They're jumping up and down in their chairs. Whereas if you went to a Democratic rally, they would stop you. We get out of here. You can't be talking that kind of stuff. We don't believe in that. So maybe the Republican Party itself may not be a terrorist organization, but it puts up with people who are clearly willing to endanger the United States and the interests of the United States in order to get their own agenda on the table.
Right.
Is that fair, James, or am I still being too weak on it?
Well, it's a fair assessment domestically, but you look at the two parties and who puts out more hits internationally on people, on democratically elected people that we don't like. I mean, Ronald Reagan had sent out a whole bunch of basically hit jobs. People that were trained at Fort Benning, Georgia School of the Americas. These guys were officers from Central American juntas. Their job was to take down domestic democratically elected governments in Central America, so that we could install our puppet governments. I mean, both parties were involved in this. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
Democrats are bad too, but
as they say in that movie Glory, everybody's got their hands dirty in this thing. Right?
Yes.
Right. So that's true. All
but
right.
The Republican Party is 100% bad.
So I'm just going to leave that as James' opinion. I'm not gonna co-sign that. But
okay.
But I appreciate it.
Log off. Good show.
All right. Thanks, James.
Thanks for calling.
Well, that's what the behaviors that are going on here provoke those kinds of intense opinions and feelings. When it's one thing when you say, I think that you and your population, y'all should work harder. You should accept the fact that maybe there's some discrimination, going on out there. If that means that you have to work harder and put up with a little bit of stuff, you should do that until you collect enough money that you can buy your own house, that you can set up your own businesses, you can buy your goods and services from yourself. You should just do it. Just eat it. Don't keep complaining about it. So there's some people that would say that. And there are other people that say, well, that may be true, but it's still not fair. You should not be cheating me. You should not be discriminating against me, and so on. And so you get those two polarities. But those are issues, but you would not go to war against your own country over those issues. I hope that makes sense, right? As much as I despise the things that I had to grow up with, with the colored only signs and, people telling you that you can't go to this movie theater, they wouldn't serve me at the Swiss Chalet, on Main Street, and so on.
I wish that perhaps this was brought up a little bit more, because it's not being taught in schools, and it should be.
Well, the Republicans now call it, critical race theory. You can't teach this. What I'm talking about is not critical race theory. They wouldn't serve me at the Swiss Chalet. Period.
It's actually U.S. history is
okay.
what it is.
I mean, it's
actual U.S. history.
That's the reality. But my point is that, as despicable as that was, and the hard feelings that I still harbor, because of that, I would not go to war against the United States and try to destroy the United States over that. I would do everything in my power to work through the systems of the United States to try to get those things to stop happening. And because people like me and others who had even more reach than I had, in the 50s and the 60s and the early 70s, they actually did do this work. So anti-miscegenation laws, got repealed. Housing discrimination laws got repealed. Insurance discrimination laws got repealed. Laws ensuring that people got treated in hospitals regardless of, whatever ethnic or racial or whatever it is that you were. You didn't have anybody putting you through that lens to decide whether or not they were going to serve you if you came into a clinic or an emergency ward. That's what we fought for, and we got that done. It doesn't mean that all of the, discriminatory behavior in people's hearts disappeared. It just means that the framework that sat on, that framework was taken apart, and over time you see less and less and less, of the behavior that framework supported. So that's what we're really talking about. But before the August 8th raid, the raid that was done on the Mar-a-Lago property, Trump and his attorneys stonewalled the FBI and U.S. National Archives Records Administration, their request for return of all the classified documents. And I don't know why they keep talking about classified documents. Even the unclassified documents that Trump took are not his property. They are all the property of the United States. Being classified doesn't make it the property of the United States.
But he declassified it, sir. It's okay to do.
But the point I'm making is that even if every single document was unclassified, it doesn't change the fact that they were still all owned by the government of the United States. In other words, the ownership of the documents is not dependent on them being classified or not being classified. The ownership of the documents is that they were created in the course of doing the business of the United States. That's how the documents got created. They're records of the business and the transactions and decisions that are being made by the United States. So these are U.S. property, period. The issue of classification is irrelevant. These are U.S. properties, period. So they keep throwing this classified description out there because it makes it seem like there's two different issues. There's classified issues and there's unclassified issues, and that Trump has some stake in the unclassified issues. So if he says that the classified, documents are not classified because I, Donald Trump, declared that they're not classified, that somehow mitigates, his ownership of the theft. But that's not true. That's patently untrue. The determination about whether something was classified or not classified has nothing to do with whether or not the United States owns the documents. They're United States documents, period. They belong in the hands of the United States. If Trump wanted to look at something in those documents, he needed to go, like everybody else did, to the director of the office, the National Archives and Records Administration, and say, I need to go look at blah, blah, blah. Can I have this for a period of time, or can I take some photocopies of it so I can reference this? And they never say no. But the reason why they do it is so that if they need to access the information that's on any of those documents, they already know that the documents are in the National Archives possession. They don't have to hunt around the country to find these things. That's why that law exists. Listen, we got to take a quick break. So if you all stick with us, we will see you on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY.
What if one day you went to your secret hiding place and instead of what you came for, you found a phone number, 1-800-662-HELP? What would you do? Would you stop and give it some thought? Before drugs take their toll on you and your family, know that there is help. You can quit. For help with drug use, call 1-800-662-HELP for free and confidential information and treatment referral, or go to samhsa.gov/know the risks.
It's easier than you think for pests to threaten your family's health. Ticks, which spread dangerous diseases, hide in tall grasses and even on your pets. Rodents easily invade your home, contaminate food, and can carry more than 35 diseases. Mosquitoes, which breed in standing water, transmit many diseases. Get the facts you need to protect your family at pestworld.org. It's that easy.
To join Mr. Hare on today's Living for the People, dial 878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. Or go to facebook.com/91.3 WBNY and comment there. That's facebook.com/91.3 WBNY, courtesy MSNBC.
The FBI and the Justice Department have become vicious monsters, controlled by radical left scoundrels, lawyers, and the media who tell them what to do, you people right there, and when to do it. They're trying to silence me, and more importantly, they are trying to silence you, but we will not be silenced, right?
So you see what Trump does, right? He tries to enroll his audience into his grievance, right? It's just absolutely nuts what Trump just got done saying. I went to an article written by Norman Merchant in the Explainer online magazine. It was a review of the documents at Trump's estate, the thing that we were talking about just a minute ago. The discovery of the hundreds of classified documents at Trump's home thrust the U.S. intelligence agencies into an uncomfortable role as the foil of a former president. The same president who says that because you're asking me to give you back the documents that belong to the government, you're vicious monsters. You're terrible people. And I mean, that's literally what he's saying, right? So the investigation comes at a perilous time in American politics, with increasing threats to law enforcement and election workers, and as a growing swath of officials assail the FBI and spread baseless theories about voter fraud. There's already a wide range of speculation about what was in these documents, with some Democrats pointing to reporting about possible nuclear secrets being in some of those documents. And when they talk about nuclear secrets, anything that involves a description of where people's nuclear weapons are at, what the ranges of the weapons, who's the source of the science, and so on. Those things are important in terms of America understanding what it's up against, and important for Americans keeping secret where their assets are and how those assets are deployed, so that if we ever have to use those assets, people aren't going to blow them up before we get a chance to get them in the air. That's why these things have to be kept secret. So when Donald Trump was in a meeting, in the White House, and he revealed something that made people aware that this information came through an agent of the CIA working with a private person in a Middle Eastern country, because that the way he shared this information made it possible for people to identify who that Middle East Asian person was. That was a violation of the most basic trust, that the intelligence community has. How could the intelligence community ever trust having a relationship with anybody outside of the United States if they thought that you were going to rat them out, and get people assassinated because you tell people that this person, is actually working for the United States rather than working for the country, that they're native to. So it's that sort of thing. But we have a caller hanging on. Let me get that call real quick. Hi, caller, are you there?
Yes, good day. I was hoping you can help me understand something.
Sure.
I'm old enough to remember a story, something you called the Manchurian Candidate.
Yep.
Why is it so hard for people to recognize Putin's hand behind being the puppet master behind Trump? Why is it so hard for people to see that, and why don't, I don't know which is the right word, the Democrats expose Trump to be Putin's puppet and those who follow him to be lackeys or subsidiaries thereof? Why is that such a hard thing for people to understand, or why doesn't the Democrats expose it for what it obviously is?
So to answer that question, I think we have to understand in a larger context that the people that support folks like Donald Trump, that show the kind of attitudes and opinions that he displays, that there's a large audience of Americans who buy into that. And the reason why they buy into it is because the core thesis is the United States is our country. When they say our, they don't mean all Americans. They mean the sons and daughters of the Anglo-Saxon invasion of America in 1492 going forward. That's what they mean, that those are the real Americans. Everybody else is not either they're not an American at all, or they're not a real American. So African people, well, you didn't come here, on the Mayflower. You're not a descendant, of the original invaders of the North America. So you're not a real American. Hispanic Americans, you walked across the Mexican border. In fact, New Mexico and California were part of Mexico when you walked across here. You're not an American either, and so on, right? That's the issue. So because those people who really, they're in the camp of we need to preserve America for us, they're easily brought into the camp of people that would use their access to American records, to try to blackmail Americans or intimidate Americans. That use their positioning inside the country to be able to do things that are in their interest as opposed to the country's interest, and so on. That's the framework in which all of this stuff sits. So it's not out of the blue. People just don't believe dumb stuff because they're just dumb. That can't be. The people believe this stuff because it provides a script that allows them to be able to justify something else that they believe that's much more intrinsic. And the thing that they really believe is that this is a America that needs to be preserved for us. In fact, I came across an article, they referred to themselves as saying that we have to be the majority. No matter what happens in this country, we, the sons and daughters of the Anglo-Saxon invaders, we have to be the majority. So they don't even object to minorities being in the country as long as collectively they stay the minority. When they start having numbers, now you know that we just talked about a few years ago, 52% of the kids in school from the preschool to 8th grade in this country right now are minorities, or people that would be referred to as minorities. And so they're seeing in the future, when you get out to 2040, 2045, 2050, you're going to have a country where maybe the Caucasian population in the country is not more than 50% of the total population of the country. Now, none of those minorities individually are going to be more than 50% of the population. It might be 15% of this, 4% of that, and so on. But collectively, what we refer to as minorities may become the majority of the people, in this country. That's what they're afraid of. That's what they don't want to see occur, because they think that will erode their power to be able to keep the country continually organized in their interest and in their image.
Related to that, when I look at the January 6th thing, I think it ties right into that.
Mm-hmm.
That police and military forces in this country know how to deal with so-called rioters, but they don't know how to deal with so-called white rioters.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you see the militias getting as strong as they are, doing what they can do, and they seeing the January 6th rioters getting all the way into the Capitol, because they don't know how to deal with so-called white rioters.
And they even had some Capitol police help escort some of these people in. I mean, when they were on the front steps, of the Capitol building, you see the police with their backs turned to the rioters, and they're walking into the Capitol building, and rioters are coming in behind them, and they're not even being impeded. They're just being walked in. On the backside of the building, you see police taking, what do you call them? Selfies? Selfies with the rioters, and then taking down the barricades, helping them take down the barricades.
So if it's white, it's right.
Right. See, so
reminds me of a line from George Orwell's Animal Farm.
Right.
All animals are created equal, but some animals are more equal.
More equal, right. And so that's the reality here. The reason why you see them having such an easy time pulling their guns out against people they consider to be the others, the minorities, the darker skinned people, they're the others. They can pull their guns out, for them. But people that come from their communities, who live, in their 3,000, 6,000 person, village, or community, they can't see themselves pulling out their guns and pointing them at those people, because those people are us. You follow? So
I hear you. They can see them pulling them out, but they won't see them pointing at them.
Right.
Even if they point them at them, they don't see them firing at them.
Right.
So, like I say, they don't know how to deal with white rioters. So I'm going to hang up and listen to the rest of the show.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you for calling.
And so what this really gets to is the American, we keep calling it the American experiment, but this American experiment only works if the people who are subject to the experiment actually believe in what the experiment is, not believe in whether or not you are the majority or the minority of the people that live in this country, but do you believe in the actual American experiment, in the American democracy? If you believe in the democracy, then you accomplish your goals working through the systems and structures of the democracy. But if you are here because you think that this is a us thing against the them things, then you're going to be willing to use your power and your access to try to intimidate the thems and preserve the interests of the us's. And that's where we get into trouble. So Hitler, he became large in Germany, being something virtually a council person, in some small village, in Germany. He becomes chancellor, all the way working up through democracy. And he kept doing things like they're doing right now, lobbying to get people who were elections officials to leave their jobs or to get fired, and then replace them with people that were aligned with Hitler's National Socialist, scheme. And they kept doing that until they had enough control over the electoral process that he could get elected. It wouldn't matter if only one person voted for him. When the votes got tallied, 100% of the votes would be for Hitler, and none of the votes would have been for whoever the other candidates were. I'm making that up, but the point I'm trying to make is that he was able to use the apparatus of the or the German democracy to actually destroy the German democracy. That's what's going on in the United States right now. You have people being knocked out as secretaries of state in individual states where the Secretary of State controls the election process in that state. If you change the Secretary of State like Raffensperger and Kemp, in Georgia, if those people had obeyed Donald Trump illegally, you would have had Georgia's votes. What do you call it? Unrecognized.
He's only asking for like 4,000 to 11,000 votes.
That's all.
Can't you just get me some of those votes?
Just a few, just a handful. Arizona, we just needed, a little less than 11.
If that phone
12,
call
000.
is the most treasonous phone call I've ever heard in my
And
entire life.
The fact that he's not in jail already for that. Why are we acting like there's something to investigate? It's on tape. You don't have to. He admitted it. It's on tape. It's clear that he did it. And so, in terms of this investigation that's still going on these documents, in terms of what's known and expected, the documents seized at Mar-a-Lago and the papers the Republican president, former president, had turned over previously, they included highly sensitive special access program designations, as well as markings for intelligence derived from secret human sources and electronic signals programs. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence Review is trying to determine the possible damage if the secrets in those documents were ever exposed. That's what's really on the table right now. And I mean, this Judge Cannon, who has the case right now, decided that firstly, she insisted that they would hire a federal magistrate to review all of the documents.
The master?
Some 11,000 documents. Now, they're in the middle of an investigation that's mature right now. Now you have to sit and do nothing for 2 or 3 months, waiting on this magistrate to decide whether this is classified or that's classified.
But that's his game. That's his game.
That's
plan.
exactly what he does.
Yeah.
But the judge is the one who controls this, and the judge didn't have to do this. And
yeah, but isn't it a Trump appointed?
Right. Exactly. And I mean, you hate to put it on those terms, but that seems clearly to be what is going on. And then what is it that this magistrate is going to be doing? The documents that are supposedly classified, if the magistrate agrees that they are classified or agrees that they aren't classified, that designation is irrelevant. Whether it's classified or not, they're still owned by the government of the United States. They asked for the documents owned by the government of the United States to be returned. They didn't ask for the classified documents to be returned. The National Archives asked for the documents that are owned by the government of the United States to be returned to the government of the United States. So what's the purpose of this whole charade that this Judge Cannon, is orchestrating?
It's called running out the clock.
That is exactly what it is. And the longer it goes, the harder it is for you to bring things to term. Right. And then, of course, if the Republicans win control over the House of Representatives and win control of the Senate, they will do everything in their power to stop the investigation by the Justice Department. And we already have records that are coming up now. This is stuff that's been known for a long time, but you couldn't get it into the record until recently, that Bill Barr, who was the Attorney General, of the country, was using the Justice Department to carry out vendettas against people who Trump felt were operating outside of Trump's interests and so on. So the Justice Department was being turned into a political player on behalf of Donald Trump. That is the exact opposite of what the Justice Department was created to do. It's just the exact opposite of what the Supreme Court is supposed to be doing. This lady, this Judge Cannon, has put her thumb on the scales, weighing the scales of justice to the side of Donald Trump, independent of what the actual evidence is on one side or the other of truth or falseness, of what's being done. For now, the Justice Department has said that the Office of the Director of National Intelligence Review is being paused after a federal judge barred the use of records seized at Mar-a-Lago into a criminal investigation. The uncertainty regarding the bounds of the court's order and its implications for the activities of the FBI has caused the intelligence community, in consultation with the Department of Justice, to temporarily pause the critical work that they're doing, trying to evaluate what the risks are to the United States if this information was ever revealed. So the results may come for weeks or months, according to what they're telling us, and the full findings may remain classified. And to be brutally honest about this, they could find with absolute certainty that Donald Trump is a criminal, that he stole stuff that belonged to the United States, that he did it for vapid, personal self-promotion reasons, that he risked, the security of the United States and what he did, all the things that you just say no one should ever be allowed to be walking the streets who does something like that. And they could still decide not to prosecute him, because to prosecute him would require having to put into evidence documents that would be in the public record. And if the information on those documents would harm the interests of the United States, you wouldn't want to put that into a public record. So he could walk away anyway on this, no matter what, gets done. So this is just a very ugly situation. And then you get people, like Willie H., who will say, what do you mean he gets to walk away?
That's right.
What makes him exempt from justice? If it was me and I did this, I wouldn't be exempt from justice.
Definitely
Why is he exempt from justice?
Definitely not.
And I'm telling you that there are tens and tens of millions of Americans who feel the same way. So this causes these schisms, in the country, where you get people on one side who are nativists, and we're fighting to keep it. We don't care if we're breaking laws. We're trying to keep this country in the control of the founders of this country. And then you got people who are Americanists, who are people that believe in the American experiment, and they feel threatened by what's being done, that this is actually going to erase and destroy the American experiment. And they can get to where they're really animated. You get the Antifa people on one side, and you get the oath keepers on the other side. And then people start taking sides, and then, the guns start getting pointed at horizontally rather than being pointed in the air. And this gets real stupid. We really have to be careful about the precipice that we're allowing this country to get on. I don't know that I have all of the answers, for this, especially if they turn around and say that the information that's in the documents we'd have to use to prosecute Donald Trump, we can't afford to allow that information to get into the public. So we're not going to prosecute Donald Trump. That would allow all of the behavior that he's done to stand. I think that's a terrible outcome as well. Go ahead.
Well, but I'm thinking, if that's determined that the documents were so sensitive that we can't even reveal them, doesn't that almost incriminate the man right there?
It does, but it doesn't put him in jail. What they should do is, if they go down that road, right?
Know that he's going to go down any road that is
right. I'm just following all of the threads, right? So if we go down that road, then the best thing that could occur would be for the Congress to vote a law into existence barring Donald Trump and other people who may be involved in this conspiracy from ever being able to hold public office again. That would at least contain, the damage that they're able to do, to our country.
Yeah, but how likely is that?
Unlikely.
Yeah.
Okay. So the office of the director, we know, connecting this back to this week, the office of the Director of National Intelligence is an office that was created in the week following the September 11th attack on the United States. Lesser known than many agencies it oversees, the Office of Director of National Intelligence was created in the reorganization of the intelligence community after the September 11 attacks, amid revelations that the FBI and the CIA did not share critical information with each other, I believe, with each other. The office was intended to oversee the 18-member intelligence community and integrate the different streams of collection and analysis produced by these 18 different agencies. The office supervises the drafting of the president's daily brief. You know, the one that Donald Trump couldn't read, that he had to have put into cartoons.
That's not fair.
I'm just repeating what they said. The ones that were in the briefings, they said he couldn't read the briefings. They had to put them in the cartoons, you know, and draw them on the board. And you
That's
know,
not fair, Mr.
they may not be fair, but I'm reporting what they said. So the distillation of top American intelligence provided to Biden and top advisors daily, that was done for Donald Trump. Biden actually reads the briefings, and Donald Trump, we don't know if he can read it all yet. Trump went through 3 directors of national intelligence in his last year in office, part of his long-running battles with the intelligence community. Trump has accused intelligence officials of selectively leaking material to undermine him or not being sufficiently loyal. He excoriated the person who spoke to a whistleblower about his pressuring Ukraine for derogatory information, saying that person was close to a spy and he committed treason. He committed treason because he reported to people that you, Donald Trump, were trying to bribe or extort or bully the president of the Ukraine to give you information against Joe Biden's son, so that you could, you know, erode people's confidence in Joe Biden and help you to get elected. That's treason, you know, as far as you're concerned. Under Biden, Avril Haines, this is a woman, Avril Haines, and other top officials have been involved in declassifying information about Russia's war against Ukraine. They have also faced questions about overly optimistic assessments of Afghanistan prior to the fall of Kabul. So these are people that all have, you know, sort of waffly, you know, backgrounds in terms of their own competence, you know, in understanding the intelligence risk, you know, that we're incurring as a country. But Michael Allen, a former Republican majority staff director of the House Intelligence Committee, said that the Office of the Director of National Intelligence is uniquely positioned to handle such a closely watched review. This is his quote from him, this, I think, is one of the reasons why you have a Director of National Intelligence to coordinate across the wide and disparate community of intelligence agencies. He said that this is their bread and butter. So we only got about 3 minutes left. I wanted to hit something quickly, 2 minutes left, sorry. Trump's attacks on, or high decibel attacks on law enforcement officials for trying to recover large quantities of classified documents, including some that reportedly had foreign nuclear secrets, was palpable in Pennsylvania recently when Trump at a political rally branded the FBI and Justice Department called them political monsters and labeled Joe Biden an enemy of the state. For those of you who believed such nonsense, ask yourself this question. If Joe Biden is an enemy of the state, who is the state? I want to leave you with that thought. If Joe Biden is the enemy of the state, then who is the state? Is the state Donald Trump? Is the estate Bill Barr? Is the estate, you know, the Ted Cruz's? Are they the state? Or is the presidency the state? Is the executive branch of the government the state? Is the legislative branch of the government the state? Is the judicial branch of the government the state? You really have to ask yourself these kinds of questions, because what Donald Trump is doing is attacking the very framework of what makes the United States a country. If that framework is cracked, what replaces it is not going to look like the United States at all. And you may not like, you know, what you get. You know what they used to always say, you know, be careful what you ask for. You might get it. Right. So that's where we are for today's program. We're going to look forward to talking to you all on Friday here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY. We'll see you all then.
WBNY Buffalo.